So let's see. I'm sorry, there was some interruption, but okay. So what basically we have discussed here in figure 14.6 is that the blood glucose level. If there is a high blood glucose, you would see the release of insulin. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas, so that is in response to high blood glucose. So what insulin will do, insulin will convert glucose into glycogen, okay? And also liver cells will use some of the glucose for respiration, for the cell function. And glucose is very, very important for your normal cellular function. Both hyper and hypoglycemia is dangerous for your health. And yeah, these disease condition must be treated immediately. So you could see here there's a feedback mechanism, and there is a high blood glucose, so insulin will be released. So insulin will convert glucose into glycogen in the liver. So in the liver, glycogen is like a storage is energy storage, where it can later release glucose, right? So when blood glucose level will drop too much, so it will have a negative feedback on release of insulin. So why we call it negative feedback? Because the insulin level will be stopped. You don't need further insulin to decrease the blood glucose level. That is extremely important. And you could see here that in this figure they have mentioned, if you have books, so you could see this figure for high blood glucose, and then we have low blood glucose level, low blood glucose. So wait a minute. Siddha, so could you show the figure 14.6 on page 184? Not know if you're not connected, it doesn't show any screen. Right. So anyhow, I think that this concept we have discussed before. I'm sure if we have any question, you can ask regarding the glucose concentration. So make sure that in your book, it's mentioned that pancreas is basically two glands in one. Why is two glands in one? Because in response to high blood glucose, it releases insulin. In response to low glucose level, it releases glucagon. So glucagon is doing opposite to insulin. What is doing insulin? Exactly opposite to that. Insulin is converting glucose to glycogen stored in the liver, while glucagon is breaking down glycogen to release glucose. So that is maintaining again the normal glucose level. And diabetes, the type 1 is insulin dependent diabetes, and you could see that those patients who are diabetic, if they eat a carbohydrate meal rich in carbohydrates, a normal meal if they take, you expect very high level of glucose, because insulin cannot be released because their pancreas is not working properly. There is a impairment in this function. So that is why you won't see the release of insulin. That's why they would be called insulin dependent patients. Type 1 diabetes mean insulin dependent. They definitely would need insulin from outside source. So their body cannot handle high glucose, okay? So hyperglycemia is leading to more thirst as well, as we need that osmolarity of plasma is, you have more glucose in the plasma. That's why patient will take more water. And this is why full of polyphagia, they would definitely eat more as well, because their glucose level is not satisfied. Insulin is not working, so body will sense that probably there's less storage of glucose. That is why people resort to eating too much sweets. And at the same time, if there is high glucose in the blood, so what will be the impact on the urine level? So how this patient would feel, or how they would respond to this high glucose and their renal function? Anybody would like to comment on that?
Okay, I have this picture arranged for you. Is this the picture you wanted?
Just a minute. Where is it? You could share the screen.
Yes, I have started the video.
This, so who is going to tell me the response of high blood glucose? What will happen to the renal function? You could raise your hand, please. Who's going to answer that? So if you have high blood glucose, definitely it will be filtered by the kidney, right? Kidney will have more load of glucose now, and glucose may not be efficiently reabsorbed. You will have, that is why you expect high level of glucose in the urine as well. So if you have more glucose in the urine, so how it will impact on the urine output? We call it polyuria. You know, these patients will have increased urination. Why? Because urine is more concentrated. So to work on this concentration, more water will be retained in the urine, and the urine output will be increased. They will have more urgency for urine. So that is one of the reasons that they are feeling very thirsty, dry mouth, and they will also drink a lot of water, and at the same time more urine output. This is one of the symptom of diabetes. Their hunger is not satisfied, of course, because they cannot make use of the glucose. Deficiency of insulin. That's why insulin is needed. So in the next page, they have mentioned if you don't eat much carbohydrates, so likely the glycogen storage will not be enough, and that will lead to hypoglycemia. Hypo means decrease in plasma glucose level. So that is also not good. Patient may feel unconscious, and some people may respond with a very unusual response. But I think, yeah, Sarah, you have something you want to ask, something you want to contribute, please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask that do people with diabetes have dry skin?
Okay, this is a very good question. That's very true. You know, they also feel dehydrated. If they have dry mouth, they also feel well dehydrated because, first of all, increased urination, because most of the water is filtered and is not reabsorbed. And they do have dry skin. Yes, that is one of the reason. And if it's old age, definitely this another risk factor for other skin condition. They definitely develop very dry skin, which is really prone to more infection and not good. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Regarding the so you got this point. Osmolarity is very, very important. Okay, so there are, you could see here in your book on page 185, they have mentioned glucometer. This is detecting, if you might have seen, I mean, patients who are regularly checking their blood glucose. We call it fasting glucose or postprandial, also after meal, randomly. Randomly mean you may have taken meal and then you check your blood glucose. And there's also fasting glucose level. That is the most accurate actually data. There is the most accurate value or most accurate measurement. Why? Because that will give a very good stable glucose concentration. If somebody has taken meal and then you take a walk, for example, we know we cannot actually measure how much meal they have consumed, but yes, there is still a value for that. This is why we call it randomly checked glucose level. That is different parameter, different value. And fasting mean if a person is fasting for 8 hours, for example, he or she should not take any water, any food, and then you take the blood sample. That's why early morning concentration, checking a blood glucose will be really good, and you could check it by glucometer. It's a small needle. You just make a small prick or your finger, and then there's a strip, glucose strip, that will, there is a sensor actually. So you insert the strip in the glucometer, which is connected to the sensor, and then it will definitely pick like capillary action. So it take the blood drop. You could see here, you just touch it on the tip of this drop, and then it will tell you the glucose level. So this is really a good indicator. All this really not a very accurate way that you should rely on. There is other parameter. Most probably you will be studying inshallah in the next higher level, how we actually measure blood glucose in the urine and the plasma, and also we have another parameter, HbA1c. That is another good parameter to check glucose level, right? You could also use urine dipsticks. You know, you just dip in the urine, so it changes color, and it also gives you a rough estimation that blood glucose level is high in the urine. So that is another parameter. But many people, you know, who are diabetic, who have history of diabetes, they do know the symptoms. So the different, it's always recommended, especially for people 40 plus, to have regular checkup for blood glucose, lipid level, renal lipid profile, renal function, and all, you know, other biochemical tests. That's really recommended to take control of your blood pressure so that you see how your body is working. I think if you have any question regarding this feedback, homeostasis, otherwise we'll move forward to question, inshallah. Question answers, and I will share with you the file. I have a copy. Do you have any question? You raise your hand, please. Otherwise, we'll move forward, and I need your active participation. Don't be shy. Just come up with the explanation, whatever you can. You should contribute. If somebody is already answered, I still encourage you could add something. You have difference of opinion, you're most welcome, okay? So inshallah, I will share with you the screen for the questions. One second, yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So these are the questions, and it's given on page 186 in your book, okay? So let's see who is going to give me answer for first question. You should know the summary. They're asking about the summary. I think what is homeostasis and why it is important. So we have covered the whole chapter. So just tell me the answer. Who is going to tell the answer? Yes. How do you define homeostasis?
Sir, may I try?
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
So the maintenance of the internal body temperature of a human.
Yeah, maintaining at a constant level of the internal temperature, body temperature. Maybe it's a human being, like we have our system, blood glucose temperature and all the stuff, or maybe animals and also the plants. All this stuff, homeostasis is a very important process or a mechanism through which we can survive. You know, this is yes, this is important for our survival. Otherwise, day to day, you see temperature is increasing. You might see internally and also externally. There are a lot of parameters that keep on changing. So we need to have some control mechanism for that. Yes, homeostasis is exactly that process that help us in maintaining that constant level. What is the advantage of controlling body temperature? Yes, go ahead. Who's going to answer that? So why it is important to have... Yes, okay.
Sir, it helps that enzymes do not get denatured.
Exactly. So your body temperature is actually required for your cellular function. All mechanisms are chemical reactions that are taking place in the cells in your body need definitely need a constant temperature around 37, right? It should not increase or decrease. If it's hypothermia, your temperature is too low, still is a big problem, because you cannot continue with that temperature for longer. Your body will have some mechanism to restore body temperature to normal. Why it is needed? Because cellular function would need, otherwise many enzymes would be denatured or they would stop functioning, and this is just required. So temperature control is one of the major mechanism. Otherwise you won't survive. What is the structure of the skin? So broadly, not necessarily all the things, you can just mention some components of the structure of the skin in terms of homeostasis. I think we discussed about this, so probably you will be able to describe that. Okay, go ahead. Someone else could answer that. Okay. Structure of the skin, you remember? So as I mentioned, we call dermatologists. Dermatologist is that physician who is specialist in skin infections. You know, it's very expert on skin related problems. So derma means skin. So first of all, is dermis. Dermis is the major part of the skin, and then you have epidermis, which is above the skin, and hypodermis, which is below the skin. Hypo mean below, and epi mean above, a covering of the skin, right? So in dermis, you have major things. As you remember, what exactly is there? Would you like to recall some of the concepts we discussed there in temperature regulation? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
There are temperature receptors, pressure receptors,
Okay.
there are blood capillaries, and there are also fat cells, which are good insulators.
Boy, wonderful. Yes, very good. Yes, that's very true. And piloerector muscle, you remember? So the hair
Yes.
follicles are also there, temperature receptor, pressure, and yes, they are there. And you have vessels, very good vessel, and you have sweat glands. Yes, good. So all these are part of the structure of the skin. So the skin is, and what is the function of epidermis then? What does it do?
There are sweat pores on epidermis,
Uh-huh.
which release the sweat, and there is also a layer of dead cell.
Okay. What is the function of layer of that dead cell, that area?
Um,
You
I
remember
think,
it's
yeah,
uh-huh.
because like sometimes when you get a cut on the upper part of the skin, so it's basically dead, so there is no blood coming out.
So there's another thing. It's a protective covering. It's water resistant, as you mentioned, waterproof as well. So it does not allow all the patch and the contact that you have with the environment, because dermis, if it is exposed, that's why if you get a deep cut and you don't cover it, what will happen? So pus formation will take place, and they may lead to infection. So that's why a person will start pain, pus, and then swelling also in that area, because many inflammatory process will be taking place, and that is really not good. So epidermis, because of the dead layer, is protecting your skin, your dermis, internal skin. You have capillaries there, you have vessels there, and also, small touches will not give you much pain, because you are not basically putting much stress on the pain receptors. We call them nociceptors. Nociceptors are those receptors that are they are sensitive to pain, like heat and also pressure or cuts that you have. So yes, that is the structure of the skin. So don't forget about the dermis, which is the main, and you go back to that part of your chapter in homeostasis, where they have clearly mentioned all the structure, and dermis is the most important structure. Okay, good. How the brain, which is hypothalamus, skin and muscle, help to control your body temperature. So that is now again talking about the feedback mechanism. So how hypothalamus is regulating body temperature through skin. So there is a coordination, very efficient coordination. Hypothalamus, skin, and muscles. So just quickly, if you can briefly tell me what exactly is this, how does it do it? So you can give an example. If body temperature, outside temperature is too high, so what do you think? How hypothalamus would respond to this external stimuli?
Sir, opposite.
Opposite in a way, like what it will do?
Sir, reaction of our body opposite to stimulus.
Yeah, so that is the negative feedback. That's three. So what hypothalamus will, how it will control body temperature if it is too hot outside? What are different processes? What comes to your mind? We have discussed the mechanism.
When there is cold outside, the hypothalamus will tell the skin to decrease the heat loss.
Yes, that is true. Very good. Yes, if it's cold outside, so definitely outside cold mean your body temperature is also affected by that external temperature. So what will happen? You're probably receiving cold blood. The hypothalamus is receiving cold blood. So hypothalamus would now do different mechanism. You remember in that feedback mechanism? So what are those four steps that hypothalamus would preserve or prevent the heat loss from the body? So first of all, what will happen to generate more heat? What do you need? Your metabolic process, respiratory process, the oxygenation and cellular mechanism. Will it be faster or slow down?
Faster.
Yeah, because you need more energy. What about muscle contraction? Would it be contracting or just relax, or
Relaxed.
muscle contraction? You want to generate heat. If you want to generate more heat to overcome this cold, you know, because it's constantly there, so body has to respond to that. Body has to maintain temperature at a constant level. To do that, body has to increase metabolic reactions. And what happens if somebody is exposed to extreme cold? You might have seen that person. How does he look or she look? You may have seen these people, you know, and you may have experienced that as well.
They're shivering.
Shivering, yeah, shivering is another protective mechanism through which you are basically maintaining, because muscle contraction will be increased, not decreased. Why? Contraction would generate more heat, become more energy and more heat, right? Yeah, that's true. And what will happen? Okay, this is next step. And what about the next two other? What will happen to the sweat glands? Yes, go ahead.
They will not excrete sweat.
They really are. The sweating is stopped because it's not needed. Sweating is a cooling process, right? You don't want cooling process. You want to conserve heat. Very wonderful. And what about the blood vessels there now? Because all these different mechanisms. So there's not only one process. There are several things that will maintain your body temperature. Okay. So one thing is that respiratory process. You know, the metabolism is increased. Contraction, shivering sometimes is maintaining temperature, and then you have the sweat glands will stop working. It's not needed. And what about the vascular?
The blood vessels would be contracted to reduce
Yes,
surface
vascular
area.
will be contracted or constricted, more precisely, constriction of vessels. Constriction means narrowing of the vessels. So you don't expose much blood to the external environment. This is how it controls temperature. You want to preserve temperature. Wonderful. What about the pilo-erector muscle? Your hair on the skin?
They will lay down.
Yeah.
They lays
They
down.
will lay down or they will be contracted. What do you think? In cold, we are talking about the cold.
Sir,
They will lay down.
They will rise. They will rise.
They will
Sir,
rise.
and
You might have seen
here
if you are
became straight.
exposed, even. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
Sir, here erector muscle contract and here became straight.
Oh, yeah, they will be erected. They will be standing, not lying flat. Why? Because we mentioned about that. Who is going to? You might have seen if somebody is all of a sudden exposed to very cold wind, or maybe AC, air conditioning is very high. You would see that the hair will stand on the skin. You might see there is also the dot and a spiky, you know, a dot formation that is basically showing that you are responding. The piloerector muscles are contracted, and that is why the hair will be standing. So why this standing is important? In human, it may not be a very major role because we do not have a very uniform. People may have diversity. Some people may not have much hair on their body. But in case of animals, this is one of the major mechanisms how they are controlling their, yes. So that's why they will, if the hair is erected, so what will happen? How it will help in temperature
Can I tell?
preservation?
Sir,
What is
they would trap the air.
Yes, they will trap the air. So air is a kind of insulator. Because air is not a very good conductor of heat. You may expect, you know, if it's lying flat, you don't trap air, right? So there's one of thing that if air is trapped, so in that case, you are preserving heat. Very good. Okay, that's great. Really good. I think the role of negative feedback mechanism in homeostasis, we already discussed about the glucose. When glucose level is very high, insulin is released. When insulin is decreasing, glucose level, converting glucose into glycogen. So glucose level will go down to a level when it's just about the normal. So there will be a negative feedback. This glucose level will switch off the release of insulin because your glucose is now getting low. So insulin is no more needed. This is called negative feedback mechanism. And you could also see the same in case of cold and hot weather, how your body is regulating temperature. Okay, what about the role of the liver and pancreas in keeping blood glucose level? Yes, we just discussed that. We have recapped those concepts a while ago. I'm sure you remember that. Okay, so if you remember, pancreas is two glands in one. So why we call it two glands in one?
So because pancreas secretes insulin also and glucagon also.
Wonderful, yes. So what insulin will do? If there is what will be the role of insulin? How it can maintain glucose level constant? So this is the question. You have to answer that, please.
So liver uses some glucose in respiration and stores some glucose as glycogen.
So what helps? Liver can do it on its own, or there is some mediator for that? So what is the function? What do you think? So if you'll say, for example, that liver, this is very true. Yes, liver will store glycogen, but liver can do it on its own. Liver has got that mechanism to store glycogen. What liver will need to make use of glucose to convert into glycogen? So that is insulin, right? If you go in your book, you mentioned that insulin is released. Insulin can help. First of all, part of glucose will be used for the cellular process. You know, it's not generating energy there, but it's only for the survival of the cell, for the metabolic reaction and all the stuff to for the cell to work, to function. And glucose is converted to glycogen. Insulin will help in conversion of glucose to glycogen that will be stored in the liver. So that is one mechanism how it will maintain. And if glucose level is low, then pancreas will release glucagon, and glucagon will cause breakdown of glycogen to glucose. So these are two mechanisms. I would say pancreas has got triple actions. The triple one is, you remember the pancreatic juices. So pancreatic juice is also released in the intestinal content, released over there, right? So that is also helping in digestion of fats and also
happens in the pancreas. And that happens in the pancreatic duct, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. The duct is basically releasing these the pancreatic juice there. So it contains proteolytic enzyme. Your protein is also, like I mentioned, trypsin. So that is also digesting proteins. When protein is digested, it's converted to amino acids. Amino acid is the one that is absorbed by the blood and is needed for building proteins inside your body. So if you're eating meat, which is protein, it has to be digested. So meat cannot be absorbed like that, right? So similarly, starch, if you're eating bread, so that is starch basically. Starch is a polysaccharide. What does it mean poly? The many glucose units join together. So it has to be released. It has to release the monosaccharide and it's absorbed. Okay. Okay, that's good. And symptoms of diabetes we just discussed. Type 1 diabetes. So patient who are diabetic, what will be the three measures? Tell me only three symptoms, please. We just discussed about that. So when we say diabetes, what comes to your mind? Three major symptoms.
They will be more thirsty.
There will be more?
More thirsty.
Yes, the water intake, okay? Water intake will be increased, so they will feel more thirsty. They will feel dry mouth, dry skin, and more thirsty. This is one mechanism. Okay, one.
Feel a dry mouth, blurred vision.
Okay, yes, dry
Blurred
mouth is.
vision.
Okay, what else?
There more urination.
More urination, very good. Why more urination? This is related to something that we discussed before. Yes. Why they will have more urination?
So because they drink more water.
So yeah, exactly. This is again related to only one thing. You know what? They will drink more water. This is very correct. Yeah, that is very true. But normally, even those people will have drink more water. They still can retain the urine. You know, they will not have much problem with this. They will not have much urgency for urination. But diabetic will have it, right?
Because the kidney filters more blood.
Okay. What will happen to glucose level in diabetes? What is the term used for glucose level in diabetes?
glucose level would be high.
High. So this high glucose in scientifically, what do we call it? If you're a medical doctor, you are a scientist, you're a biology student. So if you may probably could talk to layman that this blood glucose level is high, but there is a scientific term for that. We discussed, your book has described that.
Hyperglycemia.
Hyperglycemia.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, that is the term. Wonderful. I expect this scientific. It's okay. You're absolutely right to say that blood glucose level is high, plasma glucose is high. But you say diabetes will have hyperglycemia, and diabetic you have hyperglycemia, very high level of glucose. Now everything is related to glucose. If there is high glucose in the plasma, osmolarity is increased. That's why you will have more thirsty. You feel more thirsty because your osmotic pressure, the plasma is increased, and blood is glucose is very much filtered, easily filtered through the urine, and it's not reabsorbed. Ideally, your urine should not have any glucose. If there is more glucose in the urine, so it will retain more water. So you cannot control water. You cannot preserve much water. The kidney cannot function, good. So that's why more water will be retained and more urine will be formed. So more urination means more dehydration as well. That's why more dehydration means dry mouth and thirsty, feeling thirsty. You take more water, and your urine. The way that's why if you just take 3 glasses of water, you may feel you don't have that much urgency with that. Now I would say that okay, take juice, any sweetened juice with added sugar. These days we have these artificial sugar, artificial flavors. Any almarai juice, you take 3 glasses, you will have much urgency for the urination. Why? Because you have taken more glucose as well, and that is also filtered, and that's why you're putting more load, and it will cause diuresis. We have a drug that we call it diuretic. So these are some patient whose kidneys not functioning properly or efficiently. Some diuretics are given to get rid of the extra water that is accumulated in the body. So you have to take care of it. Anyhow, diuresis, we call it diuresis, mean increase urination, increase urine output because you have more glucose. Okay, if there is more glucose in the urine, more urine formation will take place, right? And that is why also in some of hypertensive patient, there is also more salt. So if there's more salt formation or more salt in the urine, so that will also retain more water. And sodium, for example, will retain water, and that is why it will cause diuresis or more urine formation. So I think we'll discuss a part of it in the chapter. We will not extend the lecture too much. I remember then your focus, but whatever we discuss, we make sure that you understood that. If you have question, you're most welcome to ask me anytime, and inshallah in next lecture. So we are moving forward to a part of it. I think we'll not cover the whole. So tell me, explain the differences between each of the following pairs of terms. We have mentioned endothermic and ectothermic.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Endothermic would be an organism which can maintain its internal body temperature, and ectothermic would be an organism which cannot maintain. So an ectothermic organism would keep on moving to try to maintain the ideal body temperature.
Wonderful, excellent, very good explanation. You get the full marks for that. Endothermic is also called warm-blooded. They maintain their own body temperature, while ectothermic cannot maintain their body temperature. They depend on the external environment. As we mentioned about the, what was the animal that we mentioned before? Iguanas? Yeah, iguanas cannot maintain its body temperature. You remember it goes deep in the sea for a while, just for the food and to get some feed, and then it comes back on the shiny area where the sunlight is on the rocks. It stays there so that it can get body temperature. Yes, very good. Okay, so dermis and epidermis. First of all, tell me also the difference. What do you mean dermis and what is epidermis?
Sir, I know epidermis.
Oh, go ahead. Yes, okay.
Sir, epidermis means the outer layer of the skin in the mammals.
Okay, very good. Yes, the upper covering. You consider your own body. When you are answering question, I would say that don't just memorize facts and figures. You could also think of your own body. When I say epidermis, you could look at your skin. You have a dead cells lying on your skin. That is called epidermis. This is above the dermis. And you may have experienced cuts and scratches, you know, and that will expose also the dermis, the lower part of the skin. So epidermis is the upper part. Okay, good. And what about the dermis then? Who is going to answer dermis?
Can I tell?
Yes, yes.
So the dermis is beneath the epidermis and it contains connective tissues, hair follicles, and sweat glands.
Wonderful. I think really you're very good. Excellent. You mentioned the connective tissue. This is more important. Okay. Dermis does have connecting tissue, right? Collagen and all the stuff. Why? That also maintain the texture of the skin. You know, when people get old, you might have seen wrinkling of the skin. You won't see, you could see skin of the young people and also young babies and infants, for example, very intake, very brilliant skin. And gradually it processes by aging, they lose this elasticity, the connectivity, you know, the integrity of the skin. So the wrinkling is because of the impairment in the connecting tissue or in the dermis. Yes, apart from the thermal regulation that we mentioned before, dermis is this very nice point. Excellent. I really appreciate that you are integrating such nice information. I'm sure you won't forget it. Okay, great. In dermis, we talked about vessels and sweat glands and piloerector muscles and all the stuff, pressure receptors, for example. Okay, what is vasoconstriction and vasodilation?
So may I tell?
Go ahead.
So vasoconstriction is narrowing of blood vessel and vasodilation is widening of blood vessel.
Wonderful. This is absolutely correct. This is the difference. Yes. So who is going to tell me, just integrate, when was it vasoconstriction will happen and what circumstances vasodilation will happen? In terms of yes, yes, go ahead.
Vasoconstriction is a response to being cold, while vasodilation is a response to being hot.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead now. Next question is glycogen and glucagon.
Sir, may I answer?
Yes, yes.
So glycogen is a hormone secreted by the pancreas, which increases the blood glucose level. And glycogen is the polysaccharide that is used as an energy store in animal cells and fungi.
Okay, so glycogen and glucagon in terms of glucose homeostasis, if we'll summarize just briefly, we'll not talk about these the microbes and the fungi. So here this chapter is mainly focused on your homeostasis in biological system or on not unicellular. Unicellular have different mechanism, different ways. Okay, so could you please repeat that, glycogen and glucagon, or somebody else would like to?
Yes, sir.
add? Yeah, go ahead.
So glucagon is a hormone secreted by the pancreas, which increase the blood glucose level. And
in response to glucagon will be released by pancreas in response to
increase
what?
of blood glucose level.
Increase in
Sir,
response to low in response to low blood glucose level. So that will cause the breakdown of glycogen, so increasing blood glucose level. When I say response, I actually talking about the condition. So in what condition glucagon will be released, and that is in hypoglycemia. When there you have hypoglycemia, glucagon can take care of that by increasing blood glucose level. And what about the glycogen then? What is glycogen?
Glycogen is a polysaccharide that is used as an energy store in animal cells.
Correct. This is a storage. Very good. Glucose is converted to glycogen by which hormone? By which hormone in your body? Glycogen. Who is going to tell us? We mentioned about that, I think, a while ago in much detail. Yes. So they're asking difference. Yeah, this is a difference. Difference is correct. I would say you satisfied the answer, the question. But the only thing is that I want a little bit more integration, that when you're talking about glycogen, you could say that insulin is basically converting glucose into glycogen, which is stored in the liver. Okay. So this is a full answer. And I mean, this is always better to don't you know, memorize facts and figures in bits and pieces or fragmented. Try to have holistic. Okay, so that will help you a lot. You won't forget things very easily. So in exam you may expect many questions. They may not ask glycogen and glucagon. They may ask why, how glycogen is stored in the liver. So and then you should have answered that insulin is released and there's converting glucose into glycogen, which is stored in the liver. Okay, so the second question, then inshallah we'll finish. Okay, second question is, each of these sentences contains incorrect information. So identify what is wrong with that, and then write correct and make them correct. So first of all, A, homeostasis means keeping your body temperature constant. Is that correct?
Yes,
These
sir.
all sentences are incorrect. They are saying they are incorrect. So you have already mentioned that this is incorrect. Homeostasis means keeping your body temperature constant. If this is incorrect, then what is the correct version then?
Homeostasis means keeping your body's internal environment constant.
Excellent. This is the answer. This is the correct. Homeostasis is not working on only temperature. The information is, of course, this information itself is correct, because homeostasis, keeping temperature constant, is one part of homeostasis. But homeostasis itself is not a the whole thing. Keeping temperature constant is one component of homeostasis. Homeostasis has got broader control on your body temperature, blood pressure, blood glucose, all other parameters that you have in your body. So homeostasis is working on the internal environment, whatever it is, glucose, temperature, blood pressure, heart rate, your pupil size, or stuff like that. This should yeah, so homeostasis is a whole process. So always focus on the question. The question may sometimes distract you. You might be thinking, yeah, we discussed about homeostasis. It does control temperature and make it constant. This is correct. But here the question is wrong. It's talking about homeostasis as a whole, the whole process. Okay, when we are cold, our hairs stand up on end, which keeps us warm.
So may I try?
Yeah.
So when we are cold, our hair stand on end, which keeps the body temp, which prevents sweat get heat lost, which prevents heat lost.
Yeah, this you could say this is not the only way to keep you warm. Yes, that is very true. Very good answer. Yes, this is one of the minor, you could say, a minor way to keep your body temperature constant somehow. This is not the only thing I would say. That is why they say the hair do stand on the end when the body is too cold. But in human, we do not have enough hair for this to help keep our body warm. So to keep your body warm does not mean just only your hair follicles. We discuss about the metabolism of the cell, the contraction of muscle, and all the stuff. They are basically, all these parameters are making you warm, not just the hair follicles that are contracting. This may be a very major, a very minor role. The fatty layer under the skin stops cold air getting into the body.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So what does this mean? Our hair stand on end.
I mean, the stems or the ending of your hair, is erected, at the end. On your skin is they are standing straight, not lying flat. When they say on the end, mean the whole shaft of the hair, the hair which is outside. So that is basically erected or standing. So they are meaning that one. Okay. So what is the
Okay,
fatty
sir.
layer under the skin stops cold air getting into the body? Is it correct? The fatty layer under the skin stops cold air getting into the body. Is that correct?
No.
No, this is not correct. Already they mentioned this is incorrect. So what is the correct version then?
The fatty layer under the skin stops heat from leaving the body.
Yeah, it's working as an insulation, and just focus that air is not going to touch that hypodermis. The fatty layer is not on the top of the skin. That is epidermis. Epidermis is in direct contact with the air, right? not the inner part of the skin is not in direct contact with the air. So that's why you would not say there's allowing our body, you know, to prevent heat loss. But yes, insulation is the main part, and also energy resource also. When we are too hot, our sweat glands secrete cold liquid that cool us down.
Our sweat glands would secrete sweat which evaporates, and when it evaporates, then we cool down.
Exactly. So now here is a very nice trick here. What they are mentioning, cold liquid. Sweat is not cold. If it is coming off the body, it should have the same temperature for your body. It is secreted, right? From your body. Your body has 37, around 37 point. Temperature is maintained at that 37.3. But what will happen? When it's evaporating, then it's making the surface cool. It's actually dropping the temperature. So there's one of the thing, because it will be evaporation is a cooling process. Sweat is not a cold liquid. This is wrong, totally wrong. So yes, you're right. When the sweat is released and on the skin, it's evaporated, and this evaporation is making us our body temperature cool down. Okay, good. So when you are too hot, it's very hot inside the body, your blood capillaries move closer to the skin surface. Is it correct?
No.
No, it's not correct. Then what is the correct version?
When you are too hot, your blood capillaries relax, or
No, the question is,
yeah,
when you are too hot, your blood capillaries move closer to the skin surface. Do they move closer?
they can't move closer or away from the skin surface. They just relax or contract.
Okay, so exactly, they cannot move closer or further from the skin. They are in the same position. Only they are constricted or dilated. When it is too hot, of course, they will be dilated. We call it vasodilation. Vasodilation in very hot. If your body temperature is very high, so there will be vasodilation, and this vasodilation is making you more blood to be exposed to the external environment, and then you will lose heat. Wonderful. Insulin is an enzyme that changes glucose to glycogen. Is insulin is an enzyme? Did we discuss about that? What are enzymes? They will change glucose to glycogen. So you could see some of information are really correct, but they want to confuse you with some terms. What is insulin?
Insulin is a hormone?
Yes, it's not an enzyme. It's a hormone. Enzymes are basically catalysts. They are accelerating or helping reaction. Insulin itself is a hormone that is mediating major function, a major mechanism, right? So it's not enzyme. This is wrong. Insulin is an hormone, while enzymes are basically catalysts, and they just facilitate the reaction. They may not be accelerating, or they may not be participating in the major reaction process, but they can help. So they definitely need support. Insulin itself is a hormone, not an enzyme. Yeah, that is correct. Inshallah, we'll tomorrow we'll end this question, and then we'll talk about drugs as well. Next chapter 15. So if you have any question, inshallah, we'll take it tomorrow. Bismillah. So same time, 1:45, inshallah. Okay. All the best. Have a good night.
Allah
Assalamu
Hafiz,
alaikum.
sir.
Allah Hafiz fi amanillah.
Allah Hafiz.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah Hafiz fi amanillah.
Thank you for the class.